I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes.
Yeah, we've worked hard. It's absolutely essential when you come to a football club that you recruit the right staff and the right players. We've managed to do that, and then you've got to have a base and a foundation to work on. And we've put that in place over the last sort of 14 months of how we play. Not too many grey areas of what you should do as an individual within the team, and making sure everybody in the squad knows their duties in terms of the role that they have in the team, whether it be the right-sided midfield player, his defensive duties and his offensive duties are pretty much cast in stone. And then from that base, your individual flair needs to take you forward and take you above somebody else so you can keep the position. And so there's certain jobs that we expect to do, and when I talk to my team or address my team at half-time at the end of the game, it isn't about an individual flair moment or maybe even a mistake. I wouldn't even bother with that. It might be a positional change where they was in the wrong place for that position or something like that, because we all know where we should be. So all those fundamentals are important to the success of a team.
I get a good feeling.
What's your first memory? I mean, my first memory of football was going with my dad to Cardiff City and watching John Toshak play for Cardiff City. That's my first memory of football. What was your first memory? That stimulated me. I just wondered what would stimulate you.
Well, I was lucky because I had the benefit of the 1970 World Cup. So the Brazilian team of Pelé and Revellino, and that's most vivid, watching that with my father on TV, and it was just unbelievable compared to the football that was happening that I could see in the English game. So that's what really inspired me, and I still hark back to that team even when I address my players, etc.
Where did you start and how did that progress for you?
Well, I think for me, I had a very small frame as a young player. I felt I was a July birthday, so I was right at the end of my year, which made me physically weak for my year, although I was a tall lad, tall and skinny. So I had big problems with the physical side of the game to start with, although I was quite aggressive. So when my body come to me much later in my development, way past school years, sort of 17, 18, I started to feel like I could be a player that could perhaps be a professional one day. Unfortunately, I did get that break, but a lot of people don't. And I think it's very important in developing young players that you take into account not just their physical attributes, but their mental attributes, and because some players are going to develop and blossom at different times. And you've seen that even right up until professional career, like someone like Michael Owen, who was probably more of a powerhouse from 17 to 23 than he was after. And so different players have different phases. You could see other players who have changed their game and become better players as they get older. Scotty Parker, who's had to change his game from an offensive central midfield player to now a defensive midfield player, and done it very, very well, and actually a better player. And new Brian Giggs, and people who have injuries like Alan Shearer, and he had to change his game to great effect. So it's very important for coaches to understand that never give up on a player. They can come later, they can come in a different way, or a positional change can spark them to life. So I think it's very important, and you hear this on many coaching courses, that have an open mind, and that's very important.
Like you're the one drinking what gossip.com. Now I got a word for you.
I think the important thing for me, and we're in player development, is that we focus on the aspects of the game that can be developed, and then be patient for the players to almost feel their body out, which I think I did probably at 20, probably 21 years.
Yeah, no, and I was probably the same.
Yeah.
I think what was most important for my development was a wall, which I was lucky to have outside my window of my mum's house, so she could watch me kicking the ball against the wall. And it sounds pretty primitive, but that technique of it coming back off the wall, controlling it and shooting, or whatever I was doing, passing into the wall, was everything for me when I got older. And we're lucky now that there are people like yourself and coaches who develop technical skills, because in my day, unfortunately, you didn't get any coaching on that.
No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
There's one thing I say to my academy staff here, that they must always put first, and that is ball at the feet of the player rather than anything else, because actually getting to caress and love the ball is the greatest requirement that we need at this level, because if you cannot handle the ball, forget how powerful and how you run, and you can run 14 miles, I'm afraid you're gonna fall down. So instead of coaches coaching for themselves, which I see coaches do, putting on a really clever session where they embarrass players because of the concept, they can't remember where to run, etc. Just give them the ball, let them play with it, get used to it. Repetition, as you say, it can be very, and you just need to gear that up into a manner that makes it exciting for players, because repetition can be boring. So it's important that you have good ideas, but get that ball at the feet.
Sometimes I get a good feeling.
Coaches need to understand, though, that their players have to be motivated. So there has to be progression in practices. There has to be a drive that stimulates players. And I think that's really important that they understand that. It's not about them, it's about the players.
Well, one last point, which I think is important as well, from where I sit, is that when I look at the youth team players, the thing I'm looking for is technique. Because they're all at different levels physically, they're all different sizes, and I always hope that the one with the technique grows or is big enough. He might even be big enough already, but that is what I'm looking for. So actually that's the thing that coaches should focus on, because if they was all technically gifted, that would make my job a lot easier in deciding who gets a contract and who doesn't. But I will tend, when I finally come down to the day when I have to say to a player yay or nay, it will come down to his technical ability.
One thing that you said to me a little while ago, Alan, was that when you went into the pro game, you had to work. To quote, you manufactured a left foot. I remember you saying to me, through practice. Yeah,
I did, because I hadn't used it against that wall, for example. I tried, but didn't have the technique. I never actually adopted a technique to use my weak foot. So therefore, I was always playing with a bad technique. I wasn't using my body to get any power behind the pass or my shot. So when I got to Palace and I understood the movements you needed to make your weaker foot, this foot work, I worked on that. But you can never get the rhythm that you have with your natural foot when you're starting to address a problem at 21, 22. So I become it took me about 0.5 of a second longer to get the pass off and get the shot off. I could technically do it, but it took me longer. And of course, at the pro level, I always worried I was going to give the ball away, I'll lose it with that foot. So I would adjust my good foot to use the outside of it or whatever. And that is what you don't want to do. You know, players who can open up and go either way, and just makes the game so much easier. We have a player here called Kabay, and you know, it doesn't matter how the ball comes at him. He can take it and he can manoeuvre it to his other foot, and the other player is dead in the water.
And it's very, you know, you've hit upon the fact that has to be done at a young age. Players will always have one foot slightly stronger. There's very few players who, you know.
Yeah, I've only worked with a few actually.
It's the gap. It's the gap between the weaker and the stronger foot that has to be, but that has to be started at a very young age.
Sometimes I get a good.
Do you feel that I know you've answered this, but technique is more important than the game at a young age?
Yeah, but it's also more important for coaches to understand that the easy thing for a coach to put a game on is it's the easy thing to do. The kids love it, and of course for the coach, you can get many points across. What happens to the game. You have to give people a chance to play. Ultimately, they want to play. They do, but you've got to give them the tools to be able to play. So everything leading up to that must be technical. Must be. And then the game, that can be your fitness, that can be your physical side of your game, when you contact with players, etc., etc. But the techniques that you've learned prior to that game in your training session is the most important thing. And even at my level, we work on technique and then we play a game. We work on technique, we play a game. It's very rarely we put on a session here without balls. And I'm fortunate enough to motivate men. That's what I'm good at. I'm not particularly great at motivating a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. These are specialist guys who do that. Yeah. And I've seen you do it. You're brilliant at it.
I get a good feeling, yeah.
Last question. What motivated or stimulated you to become a coach?
I think because when I was a player, I generally, when I offered advice, got good feedback. I could understand that players would ask me questions or would be interested in my point of view, and I thought that was a quality that I had, and therefore if I had that as a quality as a player, then I should enhance that quality into the coaching. That would probably come natural to me, which luckily it did.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy it?
I love it, yeah, of course. This job is fantastic, one of the greatest jobs in the world, but you know, everybody talks about the negative side of the press and the pressure and the families as well and everything, but actually being out on a sunny afternoon, cold morning, being out there training 20 professional footballers, fantastic job.
Ain't much better than that, is it?
No, it's good.
Mr. Pardew.
Well done, mate.
Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
Yes, I can. Doubt, better leave. I'm running with this plan. Pull me, grab me, crabs in the bucket can't have me. I'll be the president one day. January 1st. Oh, you like that gossip? Like you the one drinking what gossip.com. Now I got a word for your tongue. How many Rolling Stones you want? Yeah, I got a brand new spirit speaking and it's done. Woke up on the side of the bed like I won. Talk like the wind in my chest to that sun. G5 in the US to Taiwan. Now who can